Hello, everyone. I hope the summer is going well for you. And here we are again back with another round of episode in the Boardroom to Backend podcast. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Vineet Rao. So he's a IT veteran of more than 3 decades of experience across the sectors. So it is really an honor and a privilege to have him as my guest today. A very warm welcome, Vineet, for the podcast.
Thank you, Hari. I really appreciate it. Here to learn from you and your vast experience as well, and to share what I have learned in the last so many years.
Thank you so much, sir. So, just wanted to kind of begin this with trying to kind of look back on your journey as a CIO, right? And it's nothing sort of fascinating if we look at it. You have had an opportunity to work across the sectors. So, just want to kind of really start. How did you become very inquisitive about technology? What got you into technology? Are there any childhood stories or influences that you want to kind of share?
Oh, of course, of course. I'll have to go way back. Obviously, one of my earliest things, and something about how I got interested in technology in itself is number one, it was, I think even as a young child, I can't remember, maybe sixth, seventh grade, I was very fascinated with how things work. And one of the things was, I don't know if you remember, but when in our parents' generation, they had these mono tape recorders, the
Yeah.
small units. And there was a time when I actually I was just so curious about where's the sound coming from? How is this working? I think I was in my, like I said, sixth or seventh grade, and I just picked up a screwdriver and unpacked the whole thing and looked at all the different things. Not that I understood anything, but I really liked what I saw inside, and I put it all back together. And funnily, later that day when my dad tried to play one of his favorite cassettes, he could not play it. So, and then he was trying to figure out what happened, and I can say it was not a pleasant conversation after that, but that's where I think I started to look at how things work. And much later on in life, somewhere around in my high school or my senior high school, I had the everyone probably remembers, and I can probably date myself too, but we had the Nintendo Kong games. And then I had the handheld. And I was again very curious about how this whole thing worked. And because it had the visuals too, I was even more curious. So I actually opened it all up and then looked at what, and not that I understood anything again, but put it all back together, and this time everything worked. Right. So I would say that if I'm looking back at where it started, that's where it started. But then somehow, somewhere, I kept up with that trend. And when the time came to pick my course in college, I just gravitated towards computer science, and that's what I ended up engineering in. So it's been a curiosity, I must say.
Interesting. I mean, interesting that your initial curiosity was mostly in electronics, but you pivoted towards more of a computer science as you came to the college. So similarly, when you look at your career, is there any pivotal moment that you would say that set you up for into this leadership role that you are currently in? So because these are very, very important moments of life.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm so, like when I think about all of this, this is a great question, by the way, because it's
Yeah.
very hard to go back and say what was that exact moment that it happened, right?
Yeah.
I do feel like we all naturally have certain strengths or certain tendencies that we want to accomplish as we grow up in life and in our careers. And so you're constantly building towards it. Sometimes you're doing it extremely intentionally and you know exactly what you're doing. Sometimes it is happening because you're willing it to happen, because you're trying to get there. And that's the conscious or unconscious level at which we operate. So I think somewhere along the way, as I started through my engineering, then I got into software development. And within a few years of being in development, I started with banking and then went into more of the retail software development. I started to look at it like, how do all these pieces connect and what are the big things that make it all work together? And as a result of that, I would always ask to do more. Kept going back to my leadership and kept asking for more to do. What else can I be doing? Right. And then only because of out of curiosity. Right. So when all of that happened and then I started getting those responsibilities, now I started to feel like you know what, I think I'm starting to get the bigger picture. And now I need to help the rest of the team also understand those pivots. Obviously, as I went along in that journey, there was a plateau of sorts, right? So it's like, okay, I'm doing the same things I'm doing over and over again. And I must say, there are two individuals who come to mind, and they have been great mentors and good friends even now. One of them, who actually happened to be a coach, just told me, hey, stop, right? What is it that you want to be doing with your experience, right? You have tons of experience. What is it that you want to be doing? And I told him, I definitely want to play more of a leadership role and not having to be solving problems on a day-to-day basis. I want to be laying something for the future. Um, so he looks at it and says, "What's stopping you?" So that's a question when somebody asks, "What's stopping you?" You can look at all the different aspects and say, "Oh, there are all these factors," but really, it's me. I was limiting myself to believe that I'm going to grow into something rather than looking at it and saying, of all the things that I've done, why can't I take charge? And then when I said that, he said, yeah, so why not? Right?
Mm.
That became a question that sat in my mind. So when I was really looking for the next level or the next chapter of my growth, I was really looking at those and looking at those, the kind of opportunities that can develop. So this was one of them. And there was another gentleman who I worked with for a few years too. So he was within the business that I was working at, and it so happened that we had been to a seminar in Harvard at one point, and we were just having a conversation, and he started to look at me and say, "Hey, Vineet, what's on your mind?" Right? So I'm like, "Look, I'm learning so much about leadership in these 3 days, and when I try to reflect back on what we have done throughout my career, I can relate to it, right? I just feel like I'm not applying that or not." So he's like, "Okay, what's stopping you?" Right? The
Mm.
same question he asked. I'm like, oh my God, why do two people ask me the same question? So when I say, what's stopping you? And it was, again, it's a limiting belief, right? So you say, okay, it's probably mostly me. Then he said, you got to take a leap of faith and just reach for what you want to do. And that, I think those two, like the why not and taking the leap of faith, really stuck with me. And I've been very fortunate that I was able to take action based on just those two phrases, and look for things that really gave me much more to feel happy about and content about.
Yeah, I think sometimes you need others to kind of really tell you what you are really capable of. Right? We may ourselves not be completely aware of what we can do, and because like you are so engrossed in actually building your career in your work and other things, we may not often reflect on what else can we achieve. Right? So, and it's I think good that you were able to kind of find people around you who could point you in the right direction and get you to where you are. So now, so because you're holding technology leadership across different, areas or industry sectors, what is something that has kind of remained constant as an universal truth for you to kind of operate or like for you to find success in these various sectors?
Yeah. You bring up a very good point, Hari. I must also tell you this, and you probably face this too, right?
Yeah.
So often, technologists get slotted into one industry or one vertical
Hmm.
because that's what they've done, right? So when
Yeah.
when someone looks at my background, I have if you look at my background through, right, I have two distinct areas. There's retail, there's airline. Now, can I claim myself to be a retail technologist or an airline technologist, right? So we do get slotted into those. However, the technologist is not really a person who's bringing in the technologies. A technologist is really the one who is solving the business problem using the technology. So in the process, am I, as a technologist, serving my business? Am I serving their problems? Right. So to me, when I look at what's unique or what's common amongst all of these is truly the business problems. And I can tell you that the problems that a retail industry has and an airline executive has Probably the same,
Mm.
right? So think about it. Both serve customers. If
Yeah.
customers are at the heart of it, then the problems that they're going to solve for customers who's walking into a store or going online to purchase is very similar to what an airline customer would do. So
Yeah.
how is this any different, right? So I look at it and the things that I have found and realized that given that I have had this varied experience in many different industries, the business problems are very similar.
Mm.
It's just about you identifying how to solve using the right technology for that business.
Mm. Understood. I think it makes a lot of sense. Like, you're right. Like, at the heart of every business is the customer, and you are essentially trying to kind of solve every problem that the customer may face, right, along their user journey, or it could be the consumer journey, whatever it is, you are just trying to kind of solve for that. So, more often than not, you can probably um, carry over the experience from one sector and apply it into the other area as well. So that's so true. And um, and technology, I mean, like, in 3 decades of your experience, like, how much technology has evolved, and today it is even evolving at much faster pace,
Yes,
right?
you can't keep
And
track of it.
yeah. So, and many a times, like, because of the nature of the business and where you are involved, you will have to kind of balance this both short term as well as more strategic long term technology fulfillments, right? So,
Mhm.
what has been your approach, and how have you actually tried to do that?
So I think we'll be talking about this quite a bit, right? So
Yeah.
ultimately, what are you trying to solve for the business,
Yeah.
right? And when are you trying to solve for it, right? You talked
Yeah.
about short term, long term. Do we have a definition of what short term means, what long term means, right?
Yeah.
Short term could be, can you get this done for me tomorrow,
Mm.
right? And long term could be, hey, I need to get this done in a month.
Mm.
Whereas when you look at true roadmaps, you're really looking at 2 to 3 years down the line. That's my real long term strategy. Now, how do you balance that? Really looking at this is where I would say going from a macro level to a micro level, right? To say, okay, some things need to be done. Are we doing it? And those things that need to be done, how soon can they be done? And
Yeah.
that soon, if the soon is 3 months,
Yeah.
then that's your short term. And
Mm.
how long will it take to get done? If
Yeah.
that is 6 months, then that is both your short term and your long term, right?
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's
Mm.
it's kind of paradoxical there, but then that's really when you look at how we're going to get to the point of how do I balance between short term and long term. That's where you want to say in the short term, what gets the work done now,
Mm.
long term, what's going to sustain for me later. Okay. So if something gets done through the right, if one of my engineers writes a few SQL scripts and gets the stuff done, that is short term solution. But then if you're looking at, okay, what should the long term solution be? If that means that I have to go create a database and create a data warehouse somewhere, so be it. Right. But then you have been able to juggle both. And still at the heart of it, you're solving a business problem.
Got it.
Right.
Yeah. 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 And see, many a times it's also a lot of conflict between the business and the technology. Though you are actually coming from the area of that, like, you want to kind of support the business and you are really trying to kind of help them. Business may not always see it in that manner, right? So, yeah, so that kind of creates a clear conflict. So, is there an example that you want to kind of share, or the story that you want to kind of share from your experience, where, like, how you overcame that challenge, or, like, how you have been able to kind of navigate it?
Oh, yeah, there are quite a few. So let me go back in time a little bit. I'll explain to you. In one instance, we were, and this was at the airline.
Yeah.
In one instance, we were trying to get our pricing information out, and airlines is a cutthroat business,
Yeah.
and the faster you put out your pricing out there for the customers to buy, the more revenue you can generate. And the airline business is also a cutthroat competition. So you're always looking at what your competitors are doing and what kind of pricing they're offering for what segments of origin and destination. The problem was, let's go make it faster. Okay, that was the business strategy. The thing was like, we need to get our pricing files out very fast. But the tech strategy, which was already in place behind that, was we need to invest in new servers. We need to invest in newer storage for the data. We need to bring in newer and faster programming to make that happen. While that was in motion, the business strategy said we need to get this done, right? So now, do I stop that and then only focus on solving the problem? This goes back to our earlier question, right?
Right. Right.
Can I do something in the short term so that the long term can be taken care of later, like the long term really? But then in this case, that was not the issue. The issue was not that I was going to be able to solve the pricing information problem in that short time unless I had fixed a long-term solution for taking care of the infrastructure and the code that would actually run the pricing engine.
Right.
So when I took, so the thing is, now you start to talk in business terms, right? What does the business understand? The business is really going after the ROI. Now, is
Yeah.
the ROI going to be there for this? Now, on the flip side, then I could also argue that by not doing this, you are going to realize your ROI much later.
Mm.
And in the process, you might actually be losing revenue because your pricing files are still not going to get there at the time they need to get. All right. So when you talk about this in those terms, it makes it much easier to have the conversation and to get the buy-in. And in this particular example, I was actually able to get that buy-in. So we focused on enabling or rather executing on the tech strategy to get the infrastructure and coding in place, rather than focusing on fixing the problem and putting a band-aid on a solution that might not even stick.
Very nice. So, and just shifting the gear a little bit, like, you have worked in the ERP transformation era, like, now, and then the cloud transformation. Now we are coming into the AI transformation era, right? Like, so,
Yes.
uh, whenever you are trying to kind of bring in a new technology, right? Like, when it is not so popular or like not so mainstream, I would say rather. Uh, What's your framework for evaluating whether a new technology is worth adopting for the business at that time?
Yeah. And this we face every single day, right? This is
Yeah,
the part of tech leadership is they're always trying to balance what's new out there, what is it that we need to bring in, what is it that we need to hold off on, right?
yeah,
And it's not an easy. There's no one rubric to say if this then do this and if this then do something else do
correct.
something else totally, right?
Yeah.
I think the question to really ask is the question that you asked, right? It was like, why should we be bringing in a new technology?
Hmm.
So then the questions that lead is it worth it,
Yeah,
right? Before we even get to the investment part of it, you
yeah.
always step back and say, what business problem is this going to solve?
Hmm.
All right. So then the way I look at it is, and I make fun of this all the time, and
Hmm.
I'm a big iPad fan. I make all my notes in my electronic notebook and I have an electronic pencil, right?
Hmm.
Business might say, we need a writing instrument.
Yeah,
Okay. What does the engineer think? Oh, I need to go get the best out there. And the best today is an electronic pen. Just giving an example, right?
yeah,
Best out there today is an electronic pen. So let me go get the electronic pen. And oh, by the way, it's going to cost you $100 and it's going to take me a couple of days to set it up.
yeah.
Whereas what did the business really ask? A
Hmm.
writing instrument. Could I just have sharpened and a pencil and then given it to them and say, here you go? Right? So
Yeah.
that's the evaluation. That's I know it's a very very simplified example, but then if you think about from the big ones, here's how I look at it. What is the adoption rate of that technology across the industry today?
Hmm.
And when I say industry, it's the industry that I'm serving right now. So if I'm right now in retail, right? So what is the adoption of that technology across retail?
Yeah.
Is the adoption of that technology across retail in the size of the organizations that I currently serve,
Hmm.
right? That guides me to, okay, what are the rest of my peers doing and why are they using it? Right? People talk about, okay, let's go chase the AI technology, but where? What are you going to use that for? Again, going back to the question, what business problem are you going to solve? Right?
Yeah.
So once that becomes clear, I also look at it, okay, I think like if you look at it like today, everybody talks about AI. 2 years
Mm.
ago, it was still everybody was like, oh, I really don't know what it is. But today, everybody says that it's embedded in some fashion or the other, right?
Yeah.
Which means that the growth curve is there. So now
Mm.
you're in the middle of that adoption curve.
Mm.
What is the ease of adopting that technology? And not, I'm not talking about it from a point of view of can my engineering team take care of that, right? Can my operations team support it? Can my architecture sustain that for the long term? It is more also about the user adoption of that one. How easy is it for the users to adopt, right? So I
Yeah.
look at the user adoption part as well. The third and the more important thing for me is how does it fit into our ecosystem? Is
Mm.
this something that will need, like for example, I'll give you another example here.
Yeah.
If I can add a small room to an existing home,
Yeah.
is it going to complement the home
Mm.
versus putting up an entire floor
Yeah.
of which I might only be using one room,
Right.
right?
Mm.
So
Right.
then you start to say, how does that fit into the ecosystem? Am I creating a multiple platform system over here, or am I still trying to fit it within a minimum number of platforms that I can manage and support?
Right. 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 No, I think makes a lot of sense there. Yeah, I'm probably continuing on the same path, right? Like, and the technology adoptions and other things. So, I know you interact with many peers, and you have a very wide network of technology leaders with whom you connect. So, as a technology leader, is there a belief that you hold or around technology strategy that many of your peers would disagree with?
Could you elaborate on that?
So, in terms of like, you were talking about like how you bring in your framework of technology adoption and like, how you evaluate the pieces of technology that you should bring into the organization. When you speak to your peers or like, what's popularly being used as a framework or like how they approach, do you see something that might be more contrarian that has made you successful and um, which you feel that that is what kind of sets you apart?
I don't know if anything sets me apart. I would just say I'm part of a big brotherhood of sorts, right? So I think my interactions with the several of my peers who I've worked with, most of us we share the same
Okay.
similar, very similar problems. I can say the same problems, very similar problems, right?
Hmm.
It's just the scale is different.
Right.
Whereas some might like if you even if you talk about on the adoption curve, if
Yeah.
somebody's saying, look, I got to go fast,
Yeah.
but there could be another person saying, I got to go slow to go fast,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Then it's a matter of just how do I balance it out. And the very example we talked about just before this one was all about those things, right? The usage, the usability, the ease of adoption, whether it's complementing an ecosystem and whatnot. These are very similar across my peers, right?
Yeah.
So uh, I wouldn't necessarily say that there's something that I have done that would stand out or contrarian because we all do the same thing. We're trying to solve for the business. We are trying to make the best use of it. We are trying to fit within a certain budget and a structure, and we are trying to get it done. At the same
Yeah.
time, we are also advocates for newer technologies, right? And then also making sure that we're not falling so far behind that we
Yeah.
need to build stuff that it'll take us years to come back and build stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, in effect, I don't believe there's going to be more contrarian, but I think I
Okay.
do find a lot of agreement in some of these, right? Each and again, the cohort is very different. For some people it's points 2, 3, and 4. For some people it's 1, 3, and 5. So
Right.
it's going to vary as we do things in this particular as we're trying to solve the problems for our businesses.
Sure. Sure. No, makes sense. So, and see, because we are in that technology evolution world, right? Like, we are now almost every day forced to kind of unlearn and learn new things, right? So, uh, is there something that you feel like, that is so important that you had to kind of unlearn to now become more effective as a technology leader? which you believed probably earlier, and like you had to kind of really unlearn that and uh, hit a refresh.
Oh, are you talking in terms of technology or more on the leadership
More
side?
leadership part, probably I would say.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so unlearning part was this, right? And this happened to me. This was the aha moment that happened a few years ago. And
Yeah,
you realize this too, right? You also have you've served in so many industries. You've worked with so many of the technologists, and you've also grown in your own career and your business. When that growth was happening, somewhere in the when I was in the mid-level management and then got into more of a senior leadership role, I was going with the mindset of I know this, I got this, and then saying that, hey, I've done this before, so how different is it going to be,
mm,
right?
mm,
So when you start putting those things out, it is very hard for you to give up on what you have done, but
yeah,
it is also easy to see that where you're going is not the way to go, right?
yeah,
So, and I'll give you some examples, right? So I'm very much interested in the architecture side of things, like across, when I look at my background too, I've done everything there, Hari. Like, and also because like, remember I was telling you, I'm going to ask for more. What else can I do? What more can I do? So I've gone through architecture. I've actually done business analysis. I've done QA. I've done coding for a long time, right? And then did production support, all of these. Like I wanted to expand my breadth of experience, right? So one of the things that fascinated me was being on the front end of the solutioning, which was architecture. So when I moved from being middle level manager to a senior level manager and leadership, it was very hard for me to not be involved. But when I started getting involved, it hit me that there are other ways to do things, and there are smarter people on the team to do those things. And my way is not the way that may work anymore. So I said, okay, let me pause. Let me understand what those new things are. And you'll probably relate to some of this too, right? A long time ago, we went from a totally mainframe monolithic solution to client servers. Then we went on to N tiers, then to no code, low code. So by the time we got to no code, low code, it was all about, okay, how do you architect something that's no code, low code? How do you architect something that's open source, right? So that's where I had to say, I need to step back, listen to what the real architects of the day were talking about and how they were going in solutioning, and then say, okay, now I get it, right? So this was one technology aspect where I would say I had to really unlearn, and then part of the leadership there was also just step back, man. You have smart people on the team to get the solution for you. Just
yeah.
step back so they can do the work, and you can then help them get to the promised land.
Got it. I think that's a great piece of advice too for many of the people who are on the growth path to become technology leaders, right? Like, at some point in time, you need to kind of trust your team and know that, like, you may have much smarter people who can do better job than yourself, and you
Yes,
allow them to kind of execute, and you show them the way probably, and probably in some many places you also have to get out of the way so that they can do
exactly.
what they can do,
Yes.
right? So
It's very
uh,
easy to become the bottleneck. So in
yeah,
that regard, Hari, I'm sure you probably read too, right? Steve Jobs at one point, I think for a few times, he had mentioned this, and he said this, and I'll probably be paraphrasing the whole thing, but the gist of it is very simple. You hire smart people so they can tell you what to do, not the other way around.
yeah, yeah, true, true. But yeah, more often than not, like in the moment we assume that leadership position, we think that, like, we should be the ones, we should be dictating and we should be telling everything that
Yeah.
they should be doing. But like, you are so right. Yeah, I mean, that becomes our blind spot too, right? Like, so
Yes. Yeah, you said it right. It's the blind spot, and especially for newer leaders and people who are just starting to get into the leadership roles, it
yeah,
becomes very evident and very important for them to hold on to their learnings. But the blind spot is the right word to use there.
yeah. So again, see, leadership, and especially technology leadership, you are also making a lot of decisions which are, which look to be very risky, and it takes some amount of courage, right? can you actually recall any decision you made that felt risky and probably somewhat unpopular at that time, but turned out to be the right one, right? Like,
Oh yeah.
which gave you perhaps the conviction to actually take more riskier decisions or like move forward in that way.
Oh, absolutely. I can tell you quite a few of them. I'll tell you about one particular example where we were actually. So there are two examples. One of them, there was an ERP transformation that we were going through.
Yeah,
And again, I was right there at the very forefront of it, from the evaluation selection of the vendors and going through the RFP process and all setting it all through. And there's another one when I was at the airline too. It was more about the ERP one was more of a retail shop. The airline solution was actually getting our network schedules out. And network scheduling is where all the planes. It's all about the planes, right? Which aircraft flies from what point to what point at
yeah,
what time. So there's several of those. But let me give you the example of the ERP and what happened over there. So we had defined the scope of the ERP transformation. Phase one would be all about getting our manufacturing pieces in and getting our financials in. And as we were doing that transformation, we went through a lot of, obviously the whole setup, the everything that you need to do behind the scenes, writing the code, configuration, and all that stuff. And we did it. We had a good hybrid team. We had people on the team. We had people from the business. We also had the partners who were really helping us to accomplish this. Over a period of time, and it was a long drawn out thing, right? So we had ERP implementations go 2+ years, and we were really looking to get something done within about 16 to 18 months because our financials depended on that. And so we said, okay, let's break it down further. Like these are a 1A, 1B, and then 1A was going to be financials. And once financials were done, then we said we're going to go more on the manufacturing and fulfillment side. Okay, so now we went through it. The development work was done as on time. We did our initial QA and whatnot, and then it went into the user acceptance testing. When that started to happen, there was all it went on. The initial couple of iterations were not good, obviously, right? But then you started to fix it. But what that actually did was it really make the business freeze, and they lost confidence in the ERP that this was the right solution and this was going to give us what we needed. So the thing was you have to start to work with the team. I started working with the business and the users to say, okay, let's look at it on a daily basis to say, what are some of the things that are holding you back? And what are some of the things that you can move forward with? Anything that's holding you back, we're going to fix it right away. Anything that's holding you back, we're going to have, we're going to still work through you and to make sure that it is indeed the right one to go after. Okay, did that for a few iterations. That really helped. And then there came a time after about 6 weeks, the product was in a much better shape. Right? And this was a commercial off-the-shelf product. It was not something that we built, but it was in a much better shape. The configurations were working. It was giving the results. But that trauma of having not seen that in the first couple of weeks was tremendous, right? So now the users are going through the motion. We had to reset it. We had to extend the UAT. We start to get all of that going. Then there came a time when I could not see the value of not going live because we had tested it. We had tested it so thoroughly. We knew it was working. The number of defects were dwindling. In fact, there were days when there were no defects at all. Yet the business, my finance person and the operations person asked, will it work? Right? So this is what ended up happening. And this was a strategy I'd used even with the airline too. Everything that we had set up in that environment was all production data. By that time, we were actually flowing production data into our testing site too. So it was going, not only was it going to our existing system, and it was also coming into the new ERP testing system. So now we have duplicated the performance on both. And the performance, there was no degradation. And in fact, whatever we had on the new ERP was much faster. So I had to work with my peers, right? My CFO, and the CFO had already bought in by then that, yes, I think the users are getting antsy.
Yeah.
So she asked me, what would you do? I said, I'll just declare it live. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, you have been on a production system for the last 4 weeks. It's working. You're running your reporting out of that. That is your production system. We
Mm,
are actually live. We went live four weeks ago.
mm,
And if you're okay with that, let's call that the production system and turn off the other one where we are feeding data for no reason, right? She was like, whoa, that's a big risk, right? And
mm,
I said, yes, but it's working.
mm.
If something were to go wrong, we have the other clean system. We can always fail over to that one.
Yeah.
And she said, it's on you. And I said, so be it, right?
Yeah.
Because I was confident by that time. My team has already told me, right? Everybody felt that we were ready. I
Mm,
said, so be it. And
mm,
that changed, right? So that helped me understand that, yes, sometimes when decision making becomes hard, you
mm.
need to take the risk, and someone needs to stand up and take that to say, I'll take it on myself. This and it worked. And fortunately, nothing broke. So they had the confidence in what our team had delivered, and so we said, okay, let's move on. And this is something I've done previously too at the airline, very similar situation, and it actually helped. So yeah, you talk about taking risks. This is only one aspect again, right? There are several
Yeah.
other that you can take. You can for some people, small items are big risk, and for some people, even the big risks are not risks at all.
Right. 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 Very true. Um, so there's a lot of learning from that experience, I would say. Um, now, Vineet, like you are almost now transitioning from like just being a CIO to kind of you are now thinking of the legacy that you are going to leave and like so there's a kind of a purpose beyond what you have seen as success, right? Like where do you want to kind of truly leave your impact and like what would you want to be recognized uh, beyond the being a technology leader there?
Geez, you're talking like I'm close to retirement. I'm far
No,
from
no, no.
it.
I'm not from that perspective, but like I'm just sharing that.
No, I have years to go. But that's a very good point too, Hari. I'm telling you this. I think every person, every leader who's been in a leadership role for 10 plus years
Yeah,
has to look back and say, what am I going to leave this place
yeah,
as, right? And I have believed this, and I always tell myself, and I have also told every place that I've joined prior to joining, is like I need to feel good about having made an impact in
yeah,
whatever they're trying to achieve,
mm,
right? I'm not the only one who has
yeah,
it. That's
yeah,
why I need to have played a part,
yeah,
however small or big, in that to make it to have made a meaningful impact on whatever the business or the organization is trying to achieve. If
right.
I've done that, looking back, I would say, yep, it was a successful tenure and learn from it and then apply it in another place. So I would say there's still more to do, right? I'm not done yet.
Yeah,
Still lots to do, but
mm,
it's a series of things, and I would never say it's a one thing and done, and there's not one thing that I've left behind. But I
right.
would tell you this though,
Yeah,
when whenever whenever all is said and done, I
yeah,
just want to look back and say, hey, the people I worked with and
yeah,
the people who actually worked for me,
yeah,
did they learn something out of this? Are they
mm,
going to be able to pick up what they learned from me? Good things and the bad things, right? Bad things so they can avoid doing that, and the good things that they can actually take it forward.
yeah,
Uh, did they learn something from it? Have I been able to help them grow as much as I've been helped by my own mentors and coaches to grow into a role? So I want to be looking back and saying, did I play the role of the coach perfectly?
mm, got it. So now probably shifting gear towards more of like technology, and we can't you know avoid talking about what's going on around us, right? So in terms of like the AI and other things, but you yourself have seen a lot of such transformations. Like you spoke about the low code, no code, and the RPA and the automation. You have seen some successful transformations.
Mhm.
Now, from those aspects of it, um, what are some of the learnings, and now with AI and Gen AI coming into our lives, right? So, how do you see that um, transition, and what are you actually preparing personally? Like, I'm sure, like, all of us are learning new skills. Like, we have to be equipped. Like, it
Yes.
doesn't matter at what level you are, so you have to be hands-on in some manner about AI. So, how you are seeing that, and again for the organization and as well as at the personal level.
Sure. So, and again, you're right. I think there's like a few questions you asked in that one question,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But if I'm looking at, I think AI is now getting to a point where it is more believable and
yeah,
it is more trusted, right? 2 years ago, when someone would come to me and say, "Hey, we will do the AI for you and everything else, and we are already experts in those," I would have looked at them sick. Please, can you come back when you're an expert? Then we'll talk about it, right?
yeah.
Even today, if somebody comes and says they're an expert in AI, I would take it with a pinch of salt. But then I have the ability to now ask, okay, show me what you've done. How can you back up that particular claim, right?
Okay.
So what I'm seeing is in the industry itself, even the big players, remember every technology, and I want to slightly shift the conversation a little bit here.
Yeah,
Every new technology that comes on, Hari, you know this, and we have lived through the whole internet boom, and we have lived through everything else. Like we talked about cloud strategies, we talked about blockchain, and all of those things, and then coming most recently to the AI, Gen AI stuff. There is always a period of, I would say, confusion, right? Wherein everybody wants to do it. And so everybody is attempting and trying to do everything they can all at once,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Which is good. That's how startups work. That's how companies thrive. And when the internet boom happened, that's exactly how businesses really, really, the ones who became successful went there.
yeah,
But this time, what I'm seeing is the big companies, even like the Googles, the Amazons, and the Microsofts, Oracles, they're all trying to incorporate AI in some fashion in their enterprise level solutions.
right, right.
Great for customers like us,
Yeah.
right? So for me, that is key. Rather
Mm.
than having a piece of AI that solves only one problem for my business, I would
Yeah,
rather see that thing embedded into my enterprise solution so I don't have to worry about going and bringing and plugging this in. It should fit within that enterprise solution, right?
right.
So that's the change I'm seeing. That's the change that I'm really seeing in terms of what AI can do, Gen AI can do, and what I'm seeing, what the market is offering with the vendors that were offering that. So this is something that really helps our businesses and to identify where the AI, where you should, as a CIO, try to apply those so you're making the right use of the AI to
Yeah,
solve the right business problem. Okay,
right,
how can I do that? I can only do that if I myself know a little bit about it, at least a
right.
little bit. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm not going to take away my engineer's job, right? But I
yeah,
need to go talk to my engineer about, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and how can we make it work,
right.
right? So today, I feel that that conversation is not as mature in the sense of there are so many small players out there still, which will continue to grow. However, I can't put my finger on something that is .ai and say this is the solution that will work for us. Correct? At the same time, I'm like, okay, what does that do to my, like, if you're talking about, does it help me reduce my coding time? Does it help me improve my testing time? Does it help me in ensuring that the DevOps takes place without any human intervention, right? So all those kind of, so it starts really with a question to say, how can we get to that versus
Yeah,
saying, go adopt this and doing. So for me, as I'm learning these things, I'm also learning that not there's no one AI solution that fits everything. People
yeah,
might talk AI, but
yeah,
really, or it could just end up being a massive database sitting somewhere, and you're
mm,
querying the database behind the scene like a million transactions a second,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
So is that AI? If you ask one person one, they will say yes. If you ask another person, they'll say no,
Mm,
right?
mm, mm.
So it's still part of. There's so much more to learn in this space.
Got it. So what I gather from that is, like, you're obviously probably thinking from the perspective of for your engineers and tech team to kind of see how best they can bring in and how they can adapt and probably improve the efficiency, and you're trying to kind of evaluate some of those options and facilitate that. But from the business problem standpoint of view, are there any specific use cases that you see that, like, where AI can be very disruptive and really can impact when it comes
Oh,
to your business or even otherwise?
yeah, definitely, right? So there are layers of which you can consider, right? What
Yeah,
is my low-hanging fruit? What can I solve with my AI? Anything that you have a repeatable task and
yeah,
which is repeatable to the extent where there is no need for any human intervention, I would say go and do it. For example, we adopted AI in our chatbot solution, right? So before a human gets involved, the chat takes over and helps to solve this. And many other companies have done this, right? And because we come from retail, in the retail world, it is really important that you're engaging with your customers at that level. The other place is accounting, right? There are things that you can actually do till the time it generates I don't want to say balance sheet because you really do need a human in the loop at that point in time, but at
yeah,
least it can start to generate those reports. Can it start to do the journal entries automatically? And obviously there has to be an approval process. So how much can you adopt and get to that state where you can say, yes, AI can be adopted for these? Where I think it is really going to help a lot of companies, especially in the retail world, is personalization.
yeah.
How do you recognize Hari and what do you know about Hari that you can actually guide him towards making the right purchase when Hari comes onto my website?
Right. Mhm. Yeah. So, yeah, I think the personalization itself can be taken to a new level. Of course, we were doing with some amount of machine learning, analytics, and data, and all those data modeling aspect of it. But I think with AI, it's not only understanding who am I as a person, but it is also about, like, the experience that it can create to engage. It can go to a very, very different level.
It can.
Mm.
Imagine that if I can get to understand, and I'm not saying that, I have to stalk Hari to find out. It's
Yeah,
all about trying to say, what do I know about Hari?
yeah,
What more can I learn about Hari
yeah,
that I can actually help him make the right decision for the
yeah.
stuff that he's coming to my website for, right?
True, true.
Selfishly, I can also say that, hey, I want him to go make a purchase, number one.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
him to buy more stuff from me rather than just having to do just the one thing that he's coming there for.
Agreed, agreed. And yeah, personally, are you actually, doing a lot of this AI experiments or anything that you are very passionate about it? Not probably very work related, but just out of curiosity and
Oh,
because you have been always curious about
yeah,
new
yeah.
stuff.
Just out of curiosity, I wish I could be more hands-on, but I'm not. It's been a while since I've been that hands-on with any of the technical solutions. But I must
Okay.
tell you that every executive loves AI, Gen AI, because it cuts down on so much time to
Yeah.
help with a lot of the research and even preparing strategies and strategy documents, right? So I definitely think that yes, we all somehow not rely, I would say, at least reach Gen AI to get something for us,
Yeah.
but at least not me. I'm not myself personally in an experimentation mode. I'm a little removed from that aspect of technology than I would like to be.
Yeah, perfect. No problem. And again, as we are trying to kind of get to the last segment, I had few questions which can help a lot of our listeners. So, if you could put a billboard for every CIO to read, what would it say?
Oh my God. I would just say, as a technologist, learn your business.
Okay, that's a great one. That's a great one. And is there a book or a mentor or somebody who you recommend, like, that helped you as in your own career? So some where they can go and read or probably look up to and yeah, whatnot. So anything that you can
Oh,
recommend?
You can probably see a bunch of books behind me.
Yeah, I see that.
And there are several, right? There are several that I can think about. But I'll tell you, there are three or four I think every leader should read, no matter what.
Yeah.
There is a book by Simon Sinek. I really like things that Simon Sinek says. He wrote a book called Start with the Why,
Right. Mhm.
right? And it intrigued me because really anything and everything we do, every person, and I firmly believe this, right? Every person who comes to work for an organization comes there so they can do the best of what they're capable of doing.
Yeah.
Not my best or your best, their
Their
best,
best. Mm.
right? And how do you get them to do their best? It is giving them a purpose for why we are doing things,
Mm.
right? So I was really inspired by that book. That is one book. The other book it's called Four Agreements
Mm.
by Don Miguel Ruiz. Like
Yeah.
very simple thing. I think I think forget leadership or even being in technology or whatever, right?
Yeah.
As a human being, the
Yeah.
four lessons that he gives are amazing, right?
Mm.
And it goes a long way in building a team. And I always recommend this to any of my team members, right? I say, just go read it up. It's a short book, can go read it up. And what the four simple things that he says make sense. And I don't want to give away the four things over here. People can actually go Google it within no time, right? The third one that really influenced me personally for a long time was a book by Nancy Kane, who is a professor in Harvard. And she wrote a book called Forged in Crisis.
Mm.
And it was a story about resilience. It was a story about five individuals who did things far beyond their capacity and a belief to make things work. And, two of those names, one was Abraham Lincoln
Mm.
and Frederick Douglass.
Mm.
And there are others too. There's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. There's Shackleton, who was one of the first ones who tried to reach Antarctica. Yeah, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you know about this too. So how do you become resilient, and how do leaders shine during the times of crisis? And I
Yeah.
think if you think about Swami Vivekananda, he also said that the true quality of a man is known in adversity, right? So this is somewhat related to that. And a book that I recently read was Unreasonable Hospitality. Oh,
Okay.
it's a phenomenal book, right? It is about customer service and how you can bring about customer service. This is unbelievably good, right?
Yeah.
So I think there are several books that come every now and then that kind of give me inspiration here and there. But the books that I really remember the most are Start with the Why, Four Agreements, and Fortune Crisis.
Thank you so much, Vin. And before we wind up, was there anything that you wanted to kind of share? Probably I didn't ask any piece of advice, any thought that you want to kind of leave our listeners with.
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, I wouldn't say advice, but I'll share some of my learnings and my experience. Um, there is no end to learning ever. Learn, learn, learn. You can learn from the smallest to the largest. You can learn from your neighbor. You can learn from the person sitting next to you. You can probably learn from this person you met at a store, completely a stranger who you never knew, right? But you got to learn. If you the day you stop learning, that's the day I feel like, at least I first personally feel like I'm a burden to everybody, right? So you got to learn. However small, something different, just go learn it. Doesn't matter. Learn about something. You don't have to do it, but learn about something, right? So that's one thing I would like for your listeners to really keep in mind. The other one is serve the people around you.
Mm.
You know, and I believe, like I said, right, everybody who comes to work for you, work for the organization, comes to do the best to their ability. Make that happen. Serve them so they can be the best that they can be. It's not about you. It's really about them.
Right.
That's another other piece of thing that I can give. The third thing is always have open channels of communication.
Mm.
We cannot succeed if we don't talk. And humans are the only ones who can actually use words to communicate. Unfortunately, we also misunderstand each other very often and we just walk away with it, right? But how do we get to a point where we communicate with each other constantly and then make the world a better place together?
Yeah. Vinith, It has been a great conversation. I know, I mean, probably this time is not just enough. Like, there's so much of wisdom to kind of collect from you and share. But thank you actually for making time in spite of your busy schedule and giving this. It has been really awesome for me. Thank you. Thank you. That's it.
Likewise, Hari. I mean, here's the thing, right? It's you're too kind. You're too kind. It's very. I enjoy conversations like this. You're right. We can go on for hours and hours
Yeah.
because I feel like you learn from each other, right? Again,
Right.
there's so much that you have done. There's so much that I've learned. We should continue to keep the conversation going. And I truly appreciate that you reached out and you wanted to have a conversation and then making time yourself too on a Friday afternoon. I really am thankful that you've been here and had this wonderful conversation. I enjoyed it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure, sir. Thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.